May the Lord our God enable you to proclaim that tidings with great power, consoling the hearts of the come with great sorrow, in the fulfillment of the gospel of his beloved Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, written in the account of the holy, glorious story, apostle and evangelist, John the theologian, the beloved of the Lord.
Let us attend that we listen to the Holy Gospel in wisdom. And upon your spirit, the reading is from the Holy Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, Lord, glory to you.
Let us attend. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And now the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came from a witness to bear witness to the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not the light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become sons of God, even to them that believe in his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten Father, full of grace and truth. John bare witness to him and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spoke. He that cometh after me is preferred before me. He was before me, and of his fullness have all we received the grace of grace. For the law given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ.
Glory to you, Lord, glory to you. Be comfortably seated, my brothers. We've been on a journey from the beginning of Forgiveness Sunday, where we ask one another, forgive me for my shortcomings, my faults, and sometimes if I get on your nerves, in order for us to have a good and holy Lent, the springtime of the soul. And then we journey in Holy Week, where the Lord enters Jerusalem in triumph. Everyone awaits the promised Messiah, the one who comes as promised, as the King who will deliver Israel, their people. And therefore they cried in victory, Hosanna, praise be. And for Thursday evening, or the Wednesday rather, someone comes to him. Someone who was empty, who filled their lives with all worldly things and even pleasures of the flesh. But as we know, when we try to keep ourselves occupied with all sorts of worldly things, we become empty. Therefore, she hit a crossroads in her life. and was wondering what next. She followed Jesus as an observer at first, but then as one who saw in him the power of God's mercy, forgiveness, and words which was not waffle. We have grand orators who speak beautiful things, but then they are the opposite of what they teach, what they preach. Jesus was different, and because he was different, it struck a chord with her. And that night she came to him and asked for pardon. But as we know, actions speak louder than words. Her tears washed his feet. Her hair dried them. And this was the power of forgiveness. On the Thursday night, the Lord gathered with his friends to share a meal. And that meal was the means of presence for those who were to follow after him. On the Friday, those who expected God to act in their own way, according to their own limited understanding, were caught by surprise. Instead, an eye for an eye, they heard, love one another, be good to one another, bless those who hate you, love those who curse you. That didn't go down well. So those who cried Hosanna were disappointed and shouted, crucify him, get rid of him. He's not what we asked for. Away with him. And those who brought on or fueled the fire were gathered in the Holy of Holies, the temple. And there they had the Ark of the Covenant, God's presence, which was veiled by a curtain. Mysteriously, unaided by human hands, it was violently torn down the middle and the ark was exposed. The curtains actually burnt down to show them and wake up. Fortini, the Samaritan woman, who was the woman of the well, once said to Jesus, how can you be talking to me, a stranger, a half-breed? The Samaritans were considered half-breeds by the Hebrew. And yet Jesus spoke to her like she was one of his own. And she said, but you Jews worship the living God in Jerusalem. And Jesus reminded her, the time will come when all shall worship God everywhere, because he is present in all places, filling all things with his grace. Therefore, it was the means and sign that God is not exclusively to a nation, but to all people who long and thirst for him, the waters of life. And tonight we celebrate the commemoration of his descent into hell, where he liberated everyone. You've been cheated and robbed by he who is the deceiver, in thinking that I am a warlord, that I am a taskmaster, that I deal out vengeance and punishment. No. My law is love, and therefore those whose hearts long to be loved were granted mercy and pardon by him. And he took them with him, as he uttered to the righteous Dismas, the repentant thief on the cross, today, I promise you, you'll be with me. because he too was questioning himself. Look what I've done with my life. I've cheated, lied, robbed, killed. Yet this guy here has done no wrong. Lord, remember me in your kingdom. And Jesus promises, yes, you'll be with me tonight. And therefore we celebrate Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and upon those in the tombs bestowing life. The ancient greeting was not Happy Easter, Double Pascha, Buona Pascha, no. It was a greeting of faith and an affirmation of hope. Christ is risen. Truly he is risen. Cristo risorto, veramente risorto. Christos anesti, alithos anesti. We've come on a journey of faith. But sometimes in the world, things happen that our faith may not prove authentic because we haven't stooped to the altar of God enough. We haven't allowed him to take root within our very existence. We've pushed him away. And sometimes he comes and reveals himself through others, because we are all part of his body, the church, the communion of saints. On Friday afternoon, I was given a call by a lady from a very good Italian family, and she asked me, Father Bishop, we've just had Easter and you're having yours. Would you mind to keep someone in your prayers during your Triduum, during your Pascha? And I said, of course, we know of her. Because unfortunately with the national Orthodox, we can only pray for those who are Orthodox, we can't pray for anyone else. Yet they don't understand that even the Apostle Paul says, you must pray for those in government, for the armed forces, for society, for everyone. Re-echoing what our Lord said, pray for those who hate you, those who love you, those who despise you. And therefore, she said, Father Bishop, we're in extreme agony at the moment. We just can't comprehend where God is in our lives. You're a bishop. Ask him just to give us a break, to have mercy. And I said, why? What's wrong? Well, my other cousin, we grew up as girls, and we're always united, and we're each other's bridesmaid, and we were sponsors at the kids' baptisms and confirmations and so forth. Yet tragically, her young son Michael, of 24 years age, was killed instantly in a motorbike accident on Monday night. And of course, when things like that happen, what possibly can you respond? What can you say? God's will? How can it be God's will? God wills life. We've heard it. He is the resurrection of life. Yes, sometimes we do stupid things. We bring on things by our stupidity, but sometimes we are also at the wrong place at the wrong time, as it were. Wrong place, wrong time. The Saturday before Palm Sunday is known as Lazarus Saturday. It is the prefiguration of what happens tonight. And therefore Jesus was journeying towards Jerusalem. And yet, of course they didn't have phones in those days, but a friend of the family sent word to him to say, hurry to Bethany because your relative or your cousin Lazarus is very sick. Now Bethany is only 2 miles out of Jerusalem. And Jesus was journeying towards Jerusalem for that which he was set apart for his mission, for his salvific merits. Now we know sometimes when life gets tough, we want God to act in our own way. Yet God acts in his own way, in his own time, and sometimes in a way which we could never comprehend until something happens and it all clicks and makes sense. So as Jesus was journeying to Bethany, and maybe a couple of meters away from the Lazarus household, Lazarus' sister Martha comes to confront him. Now Martha was a very pious Hebrew lass. She was very traditional. It's a bit like maybe our grandparents. They're old school. It's either black or white. There are no grey areas in between. And she says to him, now listen here. I've got no time for this. You go around touring all of Galilee. You say all these beautiful things. You're always away from your family. You accomplish things no one else can do. The supernatural. You let the blind see again. You raise those who are paralyzed. You cleanse leprosy. You do all these wonders. But have you ever thought about us? I sent word to you, yet you couldn't care less. My brother, your cousin, whom, when I remember correctly, he's always played together as kids, and now so distant. I sent word to you that he was very ill, yet you took your time. What kind of man are you? At this, the gospel is very clear. Jesus broke down and wept bitterly. A sense of failure. It's a bit like us sometimes when we try to keep our promises. But as we know, especially in the world that's getting busier and busier and busier, and before we know it, there'll be no weekend. We can just work 7-Eleven right through. Things get in the way. Impediments. We want to keep our word, but things happen. We may not intend it, but that's just the way the world is these days, and probably will get worse. Yet then, after he regains his senses from being profoundly tormented in agony over the realization of his cousin's death, and also of the bone picking from his cousin Martha. He says to her, "Right, Martha, I know you probably don't really have any time for me at the moment and are probably irritated with me, and I perceive in your heart that you're thinking or perhaps calling me all sorts of colourful things. Yet, can I ask you something?" And of course, anyone in Martha's disposition would snap back, and she said, "Make it quick, I'm not in the mood." And Jesus says to her, "Do you believe in the resurrection?" At this she rolled her eyes up and said, "Yes, but that's going to happen in God's time. Who knows? It's no good to me now." "What are you talking about? Resurrection?" And Jesus said, "Martha, the resurrection is not an event. The resurrection is a living person. I am the resurrection. I am the life. And if you believe in my name, you will behold the glory of God." At that point, to show all the religious nutters that gathered, that wanted to put in their 2 cents worth, he knelt to the ground to show humility and said, "Father, I thank you because you haven't revealed me to those people who think they know everything. But look at them. They're spiritually bankrupt. They know nothing. But I thank you because you have revealed me to those who are meek and humble of heart. Those people who go through thick and thin and always endure. And by my grace will rise again." And he calls Lazarus, "Come forth." And he grants Lazarus the spirit of life and restores Lazarus onto his cousin Martha. Beautiful story, beautiful truth. And we have heard in the Gospels the angels who announce from Gabriel to, at the Annunciation account, "Peace be upon you, Mariam, the Lord has found favour to you." To Gabriel again at the tomb, "Why do you seek those, or he who is life among those who are dead is not here, but has risen?" And the Orthodox Church has a beautiful prayer litany. And we pray and we ask that the angel of peace, assigned us of earth, may always guard us and pray for us unto God. In mercy, we pray. Grant this, O Lord. In the Italian tradition, the Monday after Pascha, after Easter, the Lord's resurrection, is called Pasquetta, but its official title, or ecclesial title, is Lunedì dell'Angelo, Monday of the Angel. Those who announce, those who are given us at the moment of our baptism, are there to protect us. But we have to call upon them, because if we don't ask, they cannot intervene. Why? Because of the grace God has given us of free will. He never intervenes. He's always transparent, but if we don't want, he stands back. Have it your way. But for us who hold on to Holy Mother Church and are living stones of He who is the living rock of the edifice of His church, we call upon them to guard and protect us, to help us, defend us, and illumine us. In modern terms, what is this illumination? What is this perception? The gut feeling. When we have a feeling that something is not right or a person is not right or we shouldn't go to a certain place, that is the grace of God given us to push us, make us aware. That's a no-go zone. Our angels who intercede for us. On a personal account, and I've never shared this before, and when I say these things, I'm always very, very careful, because sometimes people, how can I say, may have certain experiences, but we have to be very careful. First of all, what side they come from, and secondly, we have to remember if we had a bit to drink the night before or not. Anyway, it was a weeknight, and an Italian family, they're not here this evening, but they asked me to visit them, and they're very devoted to St. Nicholas of Myra, who later was stolen and taken to Bari in pure Italian fashion. Anyway, so I brought the relics of Nicholas to this family and allowed them to have some time with him, or some days with him, because that was the tradition of the early church. We have all the relics here in the altar of our Archdeacon, to spend time in the presence of the saints, because the family home is a domestic church. So what happens here should happen at home too. Anyway, after a nice prayerful time, something to eat, and of course, a bit to drink, but not too much. I said my goodbye, and I was travelling home. And of course, going down their street, Reservoir, there's the crossing of High Street. Yet as I was approaching the crossing, it was like something, someone, or just, it was very, very strange. It's like someone, you're on automatic pilot mode and just stop the car. The lights had just turned green, stopped the car. It was just like I froze. I couldn't believe what was going on. And then, out of nowhere, a semi-trailer just goes past, red lights, of course, full on, and all the cars stopped. They couldn't believe what was happening. And then it's just there and then that I realised if I had turned, I wouldn't be here this evening. So the angels are there. The Lord's grace is there. But the problem with the world today is we don't believe anymore. The problem with the church is there are many careerists inside who are spiritually bankrupt. They may wear the priest's stole. They may wear the bishop's hat. But they are fake. Because they have no love. They may have full churches. They may have structures. But where is the signs the Lord says accompanies believers? I haven't heard of a miracle for a very, very long time. Because people fail to be aware of the greatest miracle. First of all, your life. Secondly, the Eucharist. And lastly, the people around you. So therefore, may the risen Saviour and his angels be upon you. Come to you, amongst your friends, amongst your families, amongst your relatives and workplace. And may his risen presence abide with you always and give you the comfort, the peace, and the help and affection. Love is very important. Your hearts crave. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.